Hey, this is Nick Patrick, and you're listening to Double Axe Handle Smash Podcast. Don't listen to anybody else. Listen to these guys.
You're listening to Double Axe Handle Smash Podcast with your hosts, two guys you've never heard of. And now, Jack Black's doppelganger, Metal Ed. And the homeless version of Fred Durst, Johnny O.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 8th episode of Double Axe Handle Smash. I'm your interim host, Bob Ross, and I'm here with Johnny O. Say hi, Johnny O. Give him a happy little hello.
Hello, everybody.
That's my stick, Johnny O. I'm Bob Ross.
Oh, hey, what's up, everybody?
That's a little too loud. Now my afro is up on the ceiling.
You sound like you're about to introduce an episode of Masterpiece Theater.
Well, then, let me just rip off my mask. Oh, it's me, Metal Ed. It's been me the whole time.
The whole time?
The whole time. You never knew.
Ah, fool you.
I got you.
Ah.
Just like when my arch nemesis, Tatanka, joined the $1 Million Corporation.
Yeah, that was quite the screw job.
Quite the swerve.
Swerve, sorry.
Quite the swerve, right. And if Tatanka ever mans up to answer for his crimes, I'll be waiting. I will be waiting.
Yeah, we've already heard this story.
Oh, we've heard it.
I think you got a long way to wait. Cause
I've been in therapy over it for about 20 years now.
Yeah, you got problems.
I do.
Yeah.
Every time I hear a Native American cry, or that's the one. Every time I hear that.
Am I allowed to say that on the podcast?
I don't know. Probably not.
Well, let's just keep it in there.
Probably have to edit that out. Anyway, let's get down to the nitty gritty. Today we have a very special guest for all of my NWOites out there.
NWO.
Johnny O. Hit him with, as we call here, the deets.
The deets. Well, NWO, WCW referee Nick Patrick, real name Joe Hamilton. He is the son of the assassin Jody Hamilton, who recently passed away. We ended up doing this interview before the assassin passed away. Our condolences to the family. I did reach out to Nick Patrick. I'm going to call him Nick Patrick. It's just easier. We did reach out to him on social media, and we did give our condolences. But anyway, this interview, great interview, all around, great guy. You couldn't ask for a nicer man.
Most humble, down-to-earth person I think we've done so far. I mean, everybody's been great, but like, he really appreciated our time as much as we appreciated his, and that's what made his interview so much more special, I think. But before we get into the interview, let's hit him with some social media stuffs. You can follow us on Twitter at DAH_Smash. And if you follow us and give us a like, we'll give you a follow back. We're on Facebook at Double Axe Handle Smash. You can go to the website, dahsmash.com. We're on all your favorite providers. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify. We're on iHeartRadio. We're on Stitcher. We're on Deezer if you're listening abroad. Anywhere, mostly, that you can get your favorite podcast, you can find us. Double Axe Handle Smash Podcast. Now available on Google Podcasts.
Stay tuned to the end of the podcast to find out what we're talking about next time.
If you wanted to win a match in WCW in the 1990s and you were in the NWO, this was your guy.
The evil referee, Nick Patrick, a.k.a. Jody Hamilton Jr., right?
Yes, sir. That's me. Hello. How are you guys doing?
So what was it like being the son of the assassin? And when did you get smartened up to the business?
It was pretty cool for me. I've seen different things, and some people had a hard time with it. But growing up the son of the assassin was cool. A lot of people didn't know, because when I was growing up, and my dad was prominent and big, before I even got into the business, kayfabe was huge. And my dad worked under the mask all of his career, except for when he was very young breaking in. So, nobody knew. Everybody suspected my dad was a wrestler, because especially when he was home in the Georgia territory, they'd go and work the city auditorium, and he'd try to sneak out of the building, get in his car to come home, and people would try to follow him to see if it was him, And, I've had different people from school ended up, finding out who he was that way. But when I was growing up, we tried to kayfabe it, and he smartened me up at a very, very early age because he was always involved in angles where they were beating each other up and every folks were bleeding, and they had a thing going back with the Kentuckians back in the day where they were doing hard ways where they were actually busting each other open was part of the angle. And to see that as a little kid is pretty traumatic. And I can remember him at a very early. I couldn't tell you the exact age, but I was really little. And he brought me in the back and introduced me to the guy that he was going to work. And I don't even remember who the guy was at this point because I was that young. But he introduced me to the guy he was going to wrestle with, and he says, "Now I want you to know that we're friends, and this is a business, and that we work together. And it's going to get wild, but and somebody's going to bleed, but I'm going to be okay." And he let me know, because the first time I saw it when I was a real little kid, I just cried, and they knew that that we're going to have to. We can't let this go on. So they smartened me up. I was, I knew about blades and all that. What blades really freaked me out because I was a kid. I was scared to get a dadgum shot from the doctor. I couldn't imagine my dad taking a razor blade and cutting his head open. I was like, oh my God, there's that. No way. And then I saw him making them up and doing it. And I was like, oh my God, they do that. Oh, wow. But that was like at a very early age. So I knew that it was a business, and I knew that they were friends. So it wasn't. I was more traumatized by how they would actually let somebody bust them open doing it hard way. I thought that was almost. I thought, dang, I'd rather maybe let them bust me than cut me because I was scared of getting a shot. You just don't know. But it was cool, And then eventually, by the time I got in high school, some folks figured it out, and he did an angle where he took his mask off. Then it was cool, Everybody was, most people were fans, and I had some kids that because I grew up here in Atlanta, and my dad he traveled territories a lot, and he worked the Tampa territory several times, and there were some kids that went to school with me that came from that area and that were big wrestling fans. And then when they found out that it was my dad was the assassin, they just freaked out over it, Because he did that big angle with Dusty down in Florida, where he was in there, the territory before for a while, and they had a big feud going. And Pop had got real big; he got up to like a little over 300, and he left and went somewhere else, and he dropped about 60 something pounds. He really trained his butt off. He worked out hard, tanned, and he did that El Santo gimmick where he came back under a mask and pretended like he was a wrestler from Central America, a big star that come to present Dusty Rhodes with the winning home run baseball and this plaque, this little trophy plaque from the kids of some village down in Central America. And it was this big deal. And then when Dusty, all teary-eyed, looked at the baseball that had the autograph of all the little kids from the team, and when he went to accept the plaque, Pop busted the plaque over his head and put the boots to him and pulled off the El Santo mask and had the assassin mask on underneath it, and traumatized all the little children of the Tampa Bay area.
Was that on TV?
I'm sure it was it was on their Tampa TV, because I remember Pop telling me that they didn't smarten any of the guys up to what was going on because they wanted it to really be a surprise. And Jerry Briscoe got stuck out there doing commentary at the desk and didn't know what was going to happen. And he was just kind of like stuck there, and he tried to come running in to cover Dusty, and Pop grabbed Jerry and tossed him off the side too, because he was still, he was in the middle of getting heat and it was their big angle that they had going on. So, but they covered it well, and it was very successful. People still talk about that angle today.
Did you get to watch your dad on TV a lot, or did you get to how old were you when you first maybe went to the shows with him and were backstage?
Oh gosh, I went backstage with him for since I was little. Yeah. My first gig in the business, actually, I was during the summertime, whenever he was like in Georgia wrestling, because he went around territories. And once my sister and I both started in school, he kind of quit taking us around from place to place, and and he stayed here in Atlanta because he travels. He did a lot of international stuff, and the Atlanta airport was huge even back then. He could get to Australia and Japan and all the different places that he went to, and worked the Georgia territory too. So that's basically why we ended up here. But my first gig, I was like in the 5th grade. I'd go with him during the summertime to matches, and I went down to some little town. I think it was Americus, Georgia, and they didn't have anybody to ring announce. And they said, "Hey, kid, you want to ring announce? We'll give you $10." I'm like, I was scared to death. I was the kid that in class, if they was calling out people to read out loud, I was hiding behind folks. I didn't want them to call me, man. I didn't want to talk in front of people and all that. Now here I am getting thrown out in the ring to be a ring announcer. I was scared to death, but I said, okay, I'll do it. And I went out there and they didn't have a microphone or nothing. I was just standing in the middle of the ring yelling. And Pop kind of pulled me off the side. Okay, now here's what you do. And just like when I refereed, he did the same thing. Okay, now here's what you do. He pulled me off to the side. So I went out there and I did it. And heck, they liked it and let me I did it every once in a while. Whenever I'd go with them to a couple of these little towns, they'd pay me $10 and I'd be the ring announcer for them.
So not many people know this, but you started off your career as a wrestler. An injury ended up preventing you from pursuing that career, and you chose to be a referee. How did that come to be? Can you elaborate on the situation? How did you get hurt, and who trained you? Was it your dad?
Oh, I started off as a referee. I refereed first for. I started off and I was going to college, and I went with Pop to a show. I was in the Kansas City territory. I think it was Central States. It was called when Bob Geigel owned it, and I was going to Fort Dodge, Iowa with him. They had a big blizzard, and half the crew didn't make it. The half that was there, a guy named Ronnie Etchison was going to referee, but he went ahead and worked, and I refereed. So they started using me. And I was going to college at the time at Missouri Western, and I was doing that and started doing shots part-time. And I worked out with Pop as far as training weights and stuff, but he was gone to work in territories. And I started refereeing, and I was refereeing for Georgia Championship Wrestling. And my first match I had was with Bob Roop. They did an angle with me where I did some kind of call, and he attacked me, and I was going to fight him. So my first matches were street fights with Bob Roop. But the people that worked out in the ring with me to get me ready to start working was Brad Armstrong, was Tim Horner, was Buzz Sawyer, and was Ronnie Garvin.
Those are some pretty good names.
Yeah, man, I was very blessed and fortunate to be in a good spot with good people and good friends. And we'd go to different towns and show up early because the ring was set up, and I'd go till I blow. There'd be a trash can out there, and I'd work with all of them. And that Buzz was the worst one. He would get you going, man. He was suplexing me and bouncing my ass around. I was like, oh my God. But it was great experience, and it got me started, got my timing ready for. I did my thing with Roop, and then shortly after that, Crockett ended up buying it, and they didn't really have a spot for me as a worker, and they wanted me to ref, and I wasn't interested in that. So I went and I worked in Pensacola territory for a little while. And from there, I went to work for Watts out in Louisiana. And that's when I got hurt. I'd worked out there for about a little over 8 months, something like that. And it was 2 weeks before Christmas. I was out there, and my wife was home. I was paying 2 rents. My wife was pregnant with our first child, and we had an apartment in Atlanta, and I had an apartment in Pineville, Louisiana, because it was like right smack in the middle, because Watts's territory, you work 5 different states, and there wasn't like really any particular order that was talent friendly where you could just make a loop out of it. It was like you'd be at one end one day and the extreme, and you'd be in New Orleans one day and somewhere up in Oklahoma the next day, and somewhere down in Texas the next day, and somewhere over in Arkansas the next. Man, he run you hard. But it was great learning experience. I was working with somebody different every night. I'd work with somebody that was as green as me or greener, and I'd have to try to get something out of it. And sometimes you go out there and work with guys where you just keep your mouth shut and your ears open and follow and listen and learn. I was working with Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert and Ted DiBiase and Dickie Slater, and people like that, man. If you don't learn from that, then you're in the wrong place. You need to go do something else.
So this is around the Georgia territory, and
no, this was in Louisiana. I blew the Watts territory. We was doing Yeah, in Mid South. I
Yep.
blew my knee out up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They was doing a show out at the fairgrounds, and I think they was recording TV because somebody said they seen it happen. And I was working with a kid that was one of my roommates, and I was going to go over, and we was going into the finish. I was coming off the ropes, and he was going to go to slam me, and I was going to go up and over him behind him, hit him with a roll up. And as I went up and over, and when I landed, my ankle twisted, and I was coming down with all my weight. And when my ankle went, my knee was like right behind it, and it just buckled to the outside.
Oh,
And man, I blew out every ligament and every cartilage in my knee. They had to completely reconstruct it. It was about 2 years before I was able to get back into the ring. I had to get into the real world and get a couple of real jobs to make money to support my family until I was, confident and healthy enough to where I could actually just get in the ring to be a referee. Doctor told me in '85 I wouldn't do anything ever again athletic. To be happy that I was able to walk and be able to play and maybe lightly jog with my kids. And heck, I got another 20 something years after that in the wrestling business. So, I mean, of course, I wasn't wrestling and going at that. I did it as a ref, but I did have some matches,
yeah.
as
Yeah, we're
a
going to
ref.
talk about your match with Jericho a little later.
Oh, I put it on Jericho, man. He didn't have a chance with Nick Patrick, young Nick Patrick.
He was. We'll go into that in a second. In a few minutes, I have a couple questions about that one. But so we read somewhere that when Vince McMahon bought Georgia in 1984,
Mhm.
he offered to bring you in. You declined, and that's when you were in NWA and Jim Crockett Promotions.
Yeah, actually, it was still Barnett. Crockett hadn't taken it over yet,
Okay.
and I was there for Black Saturday. I think I'm the only one I can think of that was there for Black Saturday and for the big takeover when they bought WCW out and was there and down in Panama City when they came and take over.
Wow.
I was there for both of those. I think I'm the only guy that was too.
I don't know what that says about you.
Well, it says the first time I didn't take his offer, but the second time I did. But
Yeah, right.
yeah, I learned a whole lot in between, and there really wasn't a whole lot of other options. Back then, there was other options. I said, well, heck, you coming in here, I don't want to move up to New York. I've got things going on for me right here, and if I don't work for them, I got 2 or 3 other places I can go that I've put feelers out to, and they were receptive. So I wanted to be a worker, so I went on my way and went the other direction.
When was the first time you noticed that you were a pretty damn good referee and you were pretty good at it? Like, is there like a time in your career where you realize? I mean, a lot of people when they have a they work and they're wrestlers and they're referees and they don't really realize that they're good. But is there a time that you realized that, hey, I'm pretty good at this job?
I kept learning, but I thought at an early age because when I first went to Georgia Championship Wrestling, Ronnie West was the head referee, and they put him in all the title matches and stuff that intricate finishes and stuff like that. For me to learn, and as he wanted to become more office, more we didn't have agents back then, but Ronnie ran shows and did all kinds of, Ronnie West was like a Swiss Army knife for a wrestling company. He could do anything.
Mm-hmm.
But then they let me start doing main events. And I knew that when I did my first title match, and I did a match that was a big angle between Harley and Dusty, where they were switching title back and forth, and they had a big angle that they was doing to take to Japan, and they came to the Omni to film it, and they wanted me to get juice and everybody to get juice,
Yep.
And at that point, I thought, okay, they didn't slip Ronnie in here; they're having me do it, So, they're confident in my deal, And then eventually, Ronnie stepped out altogether, and then Scrappy McGowan stepped in, and then me and Scrappy was working together, and we would switch it out. I never, as a head ref, ever wanted to always be the guy that always did the main event every time. I didn't. I wanted the other people to have the opportunity to do that too. And that way they could build their resume. and I had ulterior motive too. A lot of times we were on the road every single night, and sometimes I'd let somebody else do that last match so I could go ahead and jump in the shower and get an edge out on the road, So I didn't have that ego thing where, well, I'm the head referee and I have to do the main event. That wasn't my deal. I just, especially there in WCW, I had actually become an agent. So I was an agent and a ref. So I could, I assigned every ref to whoever, but there were so many stars there. There was, you could spread it around. It wasn't like just one main event on every show, especially when the war was going on. They was trying to make every night look like a pay-per-view. And it had to be very difficult from a booking and writing standpoint.
What, like, when in WCW did you actually become the head referee? Like, was that in the early 90s?
Yeah. For a while, Tommy Young was there, and he was kind of the head referee because he was a more experienced guy. I have no problem with that because Tommy was a really good guy. And then Tommy got hurt, and I was the next most experienced guy. So that's when they kind of made me. It wasn't like a term that they gave me. It's actually wasn't like the head referee until I become like an agent. Everybody was, fairly equal. I was a head referee in WWE.
Right.
I didn't, it took me a minute to do so, but especially,
was that after Earl Hebner left? Or is that?
No, it was there when I was a head referee for, they had Earl the head referee for Raw, and they made me the head referee for SmackDown. Right. Because they were thinking about using either Mike Chioda or Earl's son Brian, but those two were butting heads with each other so bad over trying to see who was going to be the guy to step in and be the head guy that I guess they got mad about it. I guess a couple of them, they did a couple of things, and they ended up making me the head ref instead of either one of them. I think it kind of flew over. It didn't bother Chioda, I don't think. At least he didn't show, but I think it flew on Brian a little bit.
Right. All right. So when you were the evil referee, what would you say was the moment that gave you the most heat? What is the most heat you've ever had in your career, would you say?
I think the most heat, the one point where I had the most heat was the finish and I think it was with Sting, where I pulled the shoulder on the 3 count, and I was pretty much a straight ref throughout the match, and then I'd been doing a lot of things, and everybody was looking for me to be an ass and do something, but I didn't give it to them through the whole match until the finish. And I went 1, 2, and I reared back like I was going to count 3, and I grabbed my shoulder like I threw my shoulder out of whack. And I was like, oh, and I didn't make the 3 count, and you could just hear a pin drop for a second. That's when you got heat, when you get that little bit of quiet. People are like, oh no, he didn't just, and then here it comes. So I got to feel that, and I got chill bumps talking about it. It was so fun, but that was the one that got the real heat for me.
Was that Starrcade '97?
I couldn't tell you which pay-per-view, and I'm not trying to sound like I'm big-headed, but I worked for WCW for 12 years and WWE for 9, and I did a different pay-per-view every month, and they billed every one of them like it was the biggest thing since sliced bread. So I get them mixed up sometimes. I really couldn't tell you exactly what I did on any given pay-per-view. If somebody wants to talk to me about a certain match I did on a certain pay-per-view, I have to look it up and watch it. And then I remember, but it'll bring me back to different things that happened back then. But if you could just throw a match at me, like, okay, the Flair Steamboat, where was this and when? I'm like, oh God, I don't know which time. I did it several times, and I would have to look it up, because I did a different one every month for 20 something years. And they've all, after a while, they kind of run together.
You at least remember the quick count.
I remember '97. Yeah. Oh, the one that was supposed to be the quick count with Hogan and Sting.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was a very interesting story. I don't know if you guys have heard the whole lowdown on that, but I'll tell you the whole story.
Please.
When I got to the building that day early because all the refs and everybody had to be there early, and Eric was there early. He come up to me and pulled me aside. He gave me the finish, straight, simple finish. I thought, well, hell, that's easy enough. God, there's not a whole lot of twists and turns in that. So then he disappeared, and Hulk comes up to me and he tells me he wants me to do it one way. He wants a nice, regular, slow count, even a little slow. And then Sting comes up to me and he wants me to rapid fire fast count it. Now it's the same finish, but if you fast count it or slow count that's two completely different finishes, right? So I'm like, okay, well, what does management want? So I looked all day for Eric, and he did not want to pick a side. Evidently, he disappeared and was not to be found. And I could not get an agent of nobody to give me an answer on which way they wanted me to do it. So I just said, F it, man. I'm just going to split it down the middle. Nobody will get what they want. I'll count it faster than I normally count, but slower than what he wants. You know what I mean? And I guess the announcers was expecting something, and a lot of people was expecting something to happen, and it didn't quite happen the way they wanted it. And it ended up being more like, what the hell was that?
I remember being very confused watching that at home going, what just happened? Why is Brett coming out and restarting the match?
Yeah, why? Did nothing wrong happen, So
yeah, exactly.
Well, they were expecting that to happen, but now there was two different franchise players at that point in time, and that had two different groups. Hogan had his click deal, and he was with Eric, and had made things pop. But then Sting and Luger and those and the Steiners, I think, too, was also in that click. Ownership that liked them and had their back, So they had people that they could go and complain to if they was, Eric just couldn't say, okay, Sting, Lex, you guys are fired. He could have done that, but somebody from ownership would have reversed it. You know what I mean?
And plus, Sting was like the hottest thing going right there because they built him up for 2 years.
And it was his big return back and stuff with a different look and all. And so I tried all day long to get an answer. Nobody gave me one. So I split the difference and nobody got what they wanted. And I figured, well, if I do it straight, how can they fire me? Nobody gave me an answer on what they wanted. So that told me that he didn't want shoes because it put him in a spot. If Hulk wanted it one way, Sting wanted it the other. So he really couldn't give an answer. So let's just dump it on poor old Nick. Let him figure out what to do.
Well, before we get into our next question, there is something I do want to address with all of our listeners. You may be asking yourself, how did two guys we've never heard of get a podcast out there so quickly? Well, I'll tell you, we use Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout gets your podcast listed on all major podcasting networks. You'll get a great looking podcast website, audio players that you can drop into other websites, detailed analytics to see how people are listening, tools to promote your episodes, and much, much more. I can tell you personally that John is not the most technologically inclined person, and he sent a lot of emails, and they sent a lot of replies. They helped us get our episodes out there. Their responses were quick and detailed and helped somebody like John, who doesn't know a website from a web browser, to get our podcast up and running.
I used to wrestle trash cans.
Join over 100,000 podcasters already using Buzzsprout to get their message out to the world now. And by the way, if you follow the link in our show notes, that lets Buzzsprout know that we sent you. It gets you a $20 Amazon gift card if you sign up for a paid plan, and it helps support our show. Podcasting isn't hard when you have the right partners. The team at Buzzsprout is passionate about helping you succeed, so let them. Go to www.buzzsprout.com to learn more.
Let's go back really quick to the Jericho thing. It happened before this said Starrcade match that we were just talking about. You had a match with Chris Jericho with one arm behind his back. And I just went and watched that back today, World War III 96. And
Yeah.
man, you bumped around for Jericho like I'd never seen anyone bump before.
Well, thank you, man.
How was your knee?
Oh, hey, it worked out good. I was in all that whole match. He lined all of that up. I was because I knew he was going to be a star from way back. He just had to be in the right place at the right time, and it took him going to WWE for them to really put that rocket booster on him. They pushed him in WCW, but he was one of those guys like Malenko, and there was about 4 or 5 of them, Eddie and Benoit, all those guys. They had to, they got a push there, but they didn't get that WWE push, because back in the day, nobody knew how to push and make a star like Vince and WWE did. And WCW tried to emulate that a lot and had trouble. And then they got pretty good at doing it there towards, there's close towards the end. They was bringing in a lot of new faces and training people to do things the way they wanted. But that was a tough time, man.
Mm-hmm. Did you feel it in the morning for that one? Because you don't really usually wrestle, so I mean,
I blew up big time, but I was having so much fun. It's by the time I got to the back, man, I was like, because back then I still smoked cigarettes and stuff. For years I did that. I was an idiot, but I didn't quit smoking cigarettes till I started training hard with Teddy Long, and Teddy could do an hour of cardio. And he got me going with him. And the first time I tried to do cardio at 10 minutes, I was about to die, but I was still smoking cigarettes. So I got on them patches and quit. And within less than a year, I was able to do an hour cardio.
Congratulations.
So, yeah, thanks, man. So now I train with my oldest son, Nick, is autistic. If you're friends with me on Facebook, you hear me talk about him a lot. He loves to work out. And I'm glad Teddy got me doing that, because back in 2002, I started training with my boys. They were still in, Nick was like 15 and my other son was about to start middle school football. So I started working out with them, and I've been working out with Big Nick. Nick's 35 now and I'm 60, and we're still going. We're going to Planet Fitness and hitting it now. In fact, we went today. Both of us got 30 minutes in on the elliptical and 30 minutes of lifting and 10 minutes of stretching.
Awesome. So Nick, I just wanted to ask, because you hear different recounts of history, and of course WWE is going to spin it one way because they won the war, but what factors do you think spelled the actual end of WCW?
I think Vince Russo's writing and booking had a lot to do with it, and I think that it was there was a lot of things that fell into play, and if you look at it, if you're a conspiracy theorist, you'd think, well, what was John Laurinaitis doing there all that time, and how did he become Vince's hatchet man? Did he go in there to try and to drive the price up or to drive the price down for the sale throughout the booking, and he was a personnel guy. A lot of things was going on, and like I said, I put it on Vince Russo, a lot of it, because he had a different approach, and you can listen to him if you listen to his interviews on his podcast. He'll say things like, I can't believe that guy got so wrapped up and involved over wrestling. Well, hell, he was the guy running a wrestling company. How can you not have passion about the business that you are running, especially when there's people in it that has done it all their life, that have dedicated their whole entire life to try and get that little moment in the sun. There's old timers there that earn, that command respect, and you're running the whole thing, and you don't care you don't understand how somebody could get upset and be that passionate about wrestling, and the way he says it, about wrestling. When you bring that attitude into the table and you're running an A-level company, WCW or WWE, and you've got that attitude, then it's going to go down the drain. Mm-hmm. And they started booking it and running it toward the end more like a bar business, instead of a wrestling family business where you would build it and keep it strong and have things following it up so you could pass it down to the next person. They tried to get it as hot as they could and then let it drop and then sell it out as a bottom, bargain basement, kind of like you would a bar business. Right. And it's not a drink bar business. It's a wrestling business. And that's, to me, what happened to WCW.
There was a big rumor that Eric Bischoff was rumored to try to get funding to buy WCW. Would you have gone to him if he ended up buying it?
Uh, no, I think if I'd had the option to make the move of either staying with just Eric running it or going against Vince, who had just beat us in a war, I think I'd have went with Vince. If the offer would have been there for me.
Would you mind telling us and our audience about that last Nitro, the dual cast from WCW, WWE? Was there tension? Was there animosity? What was it like in the back?
Oh, we'd heard rumors that it was going to happen, but the very night before, I forgot who it was, but one of the office people showed up and told us that we know that there's a lot of rumors about selling and blah, blah, blah. We just want you to know that it is not true. And we show up the next night down there at the Panama City, and everybody's at TV, and all of a sudden there's Shano and Jerry Briscoe and the whole security team surrounding them, and they've taken over the truck. It's like, what the hell? And they kind of had a meeting like they did. They did the same thing. It was a repeat of Black Saturday, of coming in, taking over, and offering everybody a job. There'll be a job for you, and blah blah blah. They did the same thing with all of us. They got all the talent in together in a room, told us all that they'd talk to us individually, but each and every one of us would be given a chance at a job. We just had to talk to them and wait for the opportunity to pop up. Mm-hmm. But the people that got burnt out of it was all the crew people, all the camera people and all those people, because they work. That's their schedule. They do sports entertainment. So if all of a sudden their bookings for the next 6-8 months are gone, well, they don't just jump right in and say, "Hey, NFL," or "Hey, NBA," because those slots are filled too. It's so those people are the ones that got burned really bad because they weren't offered an extra job. If they were employees, then they'd got severance pay, which ended up being my saving grace too, because I had become an agent at that point for the last couple of years of WCW, and it made me a Turner employee. So I got when they bought everything out and they let everybody go, I met with Jim Ross and them, and they told me that they would hire me, but it was going to be after WrestleMania and blah blah blah. So I knew basically when I was going to start, but I still got severance pay. I was still getting some checks. Thank the Lord from WCW, and my last WCW check showed up at the house, and 2 weeks later after that, my first WWE check showed up at the house. So I was very, very fortunate that I didn't miss a stroke, but there was a lot of people that did, and they didn't turn out so well. But most of it was crew people. Everybody, pretty much all the wrestler guys were given a chance. They only brought like a handful of guys in and used them right away. Dallas Page, Booker T, I don't remember who all else, but they sent everybody else to like training camp deal to get ready to, and it was kind of a slap in the face, but hey, they won the war. And if that's meant, well, if it means getting a job and that's what you do, then that's what you do, which I didn't have to go to the training camp deal. That was cool by me. I just, I waited until my date showed up and my travel showed up and off I went.
So you make the switch from WCW, WWE. Can you elaborate if there were any differences of what they were?
A lot of differences. At WCW there, especially there toward the end, there was a lot of chiefs. Everybody thought there's a chief and not an Indian. Like I said, how can you have a pay-per-view, the biggest pay-per-view of the year that we were just talking about a little while ago, and have nobody give a referee an answer over what they want him to do for a finish? That would never, ever, ever, ever happen. That's a Chris Jericho promo for you. That would not ever happen in WWE. There's one head right there, and the buck stops there. Now, there's a lot of other people underneath him that he has stuff, but nothing gets put by out there, goes out on that television that is not okayed by him. So if you want to answer there, you go to the horse's head, and instead of the other end. And you didn't have that. You didn't have that opportunity at WCW.
What was Vince McMahon like when you met him?
It wasn't like we just sat down and talked. He shakes everybody's hand. Hello, how are you? How you doing? We didn't actually even have a conversation. I don't think I've ever I did have one or two conversations with him. I made a couple of idea pitches and stuff to him back in the day because I wasn't a shy kid. Ain't gonna hide. Hell, I was an agent for one company, but I didn't really want to be an agent at that. It wasn't offered to me, and I didn't really want to because they treated their agents so different up there, man, than at WCW. And they had a saying that, and I heard Stephanie say it, that if you're going to survive up here as an agent, they call them whatever they call producers now, I guess they call them. They used to say you have to learn how to eat a great big mouthful of shit and like it. And I'm like, well, damn, what does that have to do with wrestling or drawing money? And I never got that. So I don't really have the temperament for somebody to constantly dog me to see how much crap I'll take or to see if I'm still loyal or, well, Nick, we need you to throw your mother under the bus because we're testing your loyalty. Well, mom ain't going under the bus, So I'm not one of them kind of folks. So I knew that I knew that as a referee, I could fly under the radar and probably get a longer run out of it. Because I knew that I figured that was going to be my last run in the business anyway, with my age, my injuries, and the places to go were becoming more limited. So I was going to try to ride that out as long as I could. I did.
Do you think WWE realized your value with all the experience you had with all your everything that you've ever done? Do you think they
didn't at first, because at first they were so hell-bent on making sure that everybody knew their place. But it didn't take long. There was a couple of times, the first time, and I forgot who Rock was working with, but he put me in with Rock and somebody. And Rock was one of those guys that talked about everything, every move that was going to make. And so I was listening to it, and when they were talking something back, they had forgot a couple of things, and Vince was listening to them. I said, "What about this?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, that's right, thanks." And they kept talking, and then I said, "Oh, well, what about this?" And they go, "Oh yeah, thanks again." And Vince heard me do that, so he knew that, because back when I first started, sometimes, most of the time, when I was, especially in Georgia Championship Wrestling, they used one referee. He'd do the whole show. So you had to know every spot, every finish, everything, so I got to where I could remember a lot of shit. So that's why I sit there and I would listen to them, blah, 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 blah. And when they go back over it, I hear something they forget, I'd interject it here, or if I see them starting to forget it in the ring, I could interject it to them. But usually when you're on TV, you've got somebody with it, you get that earpiece in. So the agent that lined everything up's got notes there. And if something starts getting out of whack, he's in your ear telling you what to convey to them to get back on track.
Before we get into talking about Deep South Wrestling, what we want to do here is do some rapid fire questions.
Sure.
Just little fun things. Just it could be one or two answers. Could be as many. Take as much time as you want for these. So we're gonna do favorite food.
Favorite food. I like seafood. I like the different kinds of seafood. I like sushi a lot, but I wouldn't say it's my absolute favorite food. But man, I could eat seafood 3 or 4 nights a week.
All right. Favorite match or matches you refereed?
Oh man, I have different eras of matches that I really enjoyed doing. I loved working with Harley back in the day, and him and Dusty used to tear it down. And I loved working with Flair and Tommy Rich. I loved working with Flair and Steamboat. I loved working with Undertaker and JBL. They were a lot of fun to work with because they could work the old school style and mix the new school in with it. You know what I mean? And it wasn't like a lot of times when you work with younger guys, they're afraid to do any kind of improv. And the old timers like Undertaker, especially, and you don't do it on TV, but you do it at house shows. You try different stuff that you don't even talk about just to see if it works, And a lot of times younger kids are afraid to do that. And I always grew up doing it that way. So I was, so throwing something at me that we didn't talk about in the back is okay with me. I like it, because if you're into the match and you're following, you can follow that. But those guys are always fun to work with, man.
Favorite topping on a pizza?
Favorite topping on a pizza? I like pepperoni.
Pepperoni. Just a
That
plain
seems-
Jane pepperoni and cheese?
I like pepperoni and cheese. I like to put some banana peppers and some black olives on there too.
Uh,
Black
that's-
olives. I love black
I like
olives.
banana peppers and black olives. Does pineapple belong on a pizza?
I like Hawaiian pizza. Yeah, a lot of people don't, but man, I'll change up every now and then to have a slice or two of that. I like it.
Who would you say were your closest friends in the business?
I got a handful of friends because there's people that you talk to and you work with, and then there's people that you keep up with. Teddy Long is a very good friend of mine. We traveled a lot together in both companies, in WCW and WWE, and we keep up with each other still to this day. He's a very good friend of mine. Booker T was another one. Was a very good friend of mine. That we don't keep up as much as we did back in the day, but we still do whenever we see each other. It's great. Him and Charmel are awesome. They were meant to be together. I'm glad for that. And let me see. I used to ride with Tommy Rich a lot back in the day. He was a good guy. I had to chauffeur him a lot because he got in a lot of trouble, lost his license back in the day. He couldn't drive a vehicle for a while. He needed somebody to ride him around. But he was a good friend too. I've had a bunch of good friends, but one of my really good friends, and he's passed away, was one of my best friends, I'd have to say, was Brad Armstrong. When Brad passed away, man, that was hard. It took me about 2 years before I could delete his number out of my phone. I just didn't have the heart to do it. It wasn't that I was expecting it to ring or anything. It's just, everything. And I still have things around my house that Brad gave me as gifts throughout the years. I got an old jersey. His wife worked at HBO, and I got a hockey jersey that's a Sopranos hockey jersey because Sopranos was on HBO, and it looks badass. It's got Tony, says Tony on it and stuff. And I got some glasses and stuff and some different things that he gave me. And every time I see him, I think about old Brad. He was a great guy. He was one of my true friends. But and there's others I don't want to miss, but JYD, another one. Him and I are really, really close friends and did a lot of road together at WCW. And super guy, good friend. Tim Horner, another good friend too. Him and Brad were both at my wedding. Those are two of the guys that were the only two wrestlers that was at my wedding. Old timer Gypsy Joe. I liked old Gypsy Joe. He was wild and crazy, but he was fun. You guys know the old Gypsy Joe I'm talking about. I think he worked around Tennessee a lot. He was crazy. He's passed away about 5 years ago, I think. But when I was wrestling in Louisiana, when you go there, they don't pay you for the first couple of weeks. They keep your money, and then that way they can control you a little bit. So I had a furnished apartment, but I didn't have the money to turn the power on and stuff. So I was waiting till I got my pay. So I had a roommate with me that he just started working. So Gypsy showed up. I'm going to TV, and there's Gypsy Joe. I traveled with him all through Georgia and stuff. And like, holy crap, I ended up having to actually wrestle him and work with him because I was wrestling at the time. And when I knew him before, I was a ref. So I invited him to come to my apartment, and stay with us. He can stay on the couch if he wanted to because it folded out. So he gets there. He goes, "Hey, kid, you don't have any power." I said, "No, man, we don't get paid for 2 weeks. It's going to take him, I get my money next week. We can get it turned on." He goes, "Huh." He walked out on my back patio and he looked and he saw the little fuse box deal. He popped it open and boom, plugged it in, walked in, turned on the lights, turned on the refrigerator. He goes, "All right, kid, now you got power." I was like, okay. Somebody's going to get in trouble for this, but I didn't end up getting in trouble for it. I was only there a couple of months before I moved. I saw the power guy come by and look at the box like, he knew somebody tampered it. So I called him. I said, "Look, man, I was here. I'm renting this apartment. I know the water comes along with it. I didn't know. I thought it was all part of the deal. It's furnished, I never got a bill. So I was wondering what's the deal, So they said, "No, power's not." So they didn't even charge me the back pay for the month or two that I had on. But I went ahead and paid my deposit because I was paranoid. I saw that guy back there. Well, Gypsy, he's like, Don't worry about it, kid. We got power now. Oh God, we're all going to jail.
All right, so let's discuss Deep South Wrestling and all its incarnations.
All
What
right.
was and is your involvement now?
I run it. We had a bunch of equipment left over from back when it closed down. My dad's got this big old metal building on his property, and I had a ring in there. My youngest son, we was training him because he was interested in getting in the business a little bit, and but he ended up being more interested in the technical end. He's actually working for NBC now as a freelance, but he runs the pit box and runs camera and sets up and tears down the pit box and stuff for him at the NASCAR race.
Awesome.
And so he's done well, man. He being in the other end of it really suits him a lot better than the wrestling end of it. But anyway, we had a ring set up, and I had a couple of different kids that was looking to be trained, and I worked with them a little bit. And next thing you know, more kids started wanting to work out, and I don't do it like a big class because it's a regular. It's just a small metal building, and I don't want to have 20 or 30 people in there jammed in there all at one time. So what I do is, since I'm home and it's on my parents' property and I'm able to come out there and watch them and kill two birds with one stone, I can take care of them and train people at the building. So we set it up and cleaned it up, and that's where we train, and we do shoot shows out of there and everything. And I've had a bunch of different people contact me, different kids that were like, that are actually getting looked at. Some of them have gone and had tryouts at WWE, and some of them have been down and actually had the matches on the A&E After Dark or whatever it is. Some of those kids, and they contact me. They're all
AEW,
waiting.
yeah, yep,
yeah, and they're all waiting to get looked at, waiting. And I said, well, hell, why don't we just, you're here working out. Why don't we put together our own little show, and we'll put it on the internet, and you get looked at that way until the big dogs call you in to look at you. So I had a bunch of kids call me wanting to do that. And so that's what I've done. I've put it together, and my goal is, it's hard, especially when COVID was starting to get better now. I was going to shoot for one show a month, but what I'm trying to do is to pick the best of the local kids that I can find. And I do a 1 hour show. It's the first show I did was 4 matches because I had some no shows and I had to split a tag up, and 4 matches is what I got out of it. But they were 4 really good ones. And show 2 has been on the website. Show 3 has just now been edited down. A raw version is done, I think, tonight. I'm going to try to look at it tomorrow, and it should be out really soon. And I'm just trying to drive people to looking at the website, deepsouthwrestling.com, and you can see the show for free. And see some of the best of the local kids that are around here and working in Georgia right now. And that was my goal. And I want to try and get I'm still in the process of lining up sponsors, but you got to have product to get sponsors. So I've put together 3 shows so far that I can shop for sponsors with. And I've had a couple of good prospects right now, and I'm going to have a sponsor for each match. And it's going to be like an hour show, so people can check it out for free on the website. And eventually I'm going to try to get merch set up with Deep South shirts and assassin mask for my pop, and trying to and let my pop sell his book and stuff on there, and just try to make a little business out of there. I'm not interested in trying to conquer the world. I'm not interested in trying to run all over everything. I want to have a nice, solid internet show that people can look at and see a combination of old school, new school wrestling. I don't have a crowd there. We shoot it studio style. And what I do is I have the guys that are on the card surround the ring and react in their full costume, in their full character. We don't have, what drives me nuts sometimes when I watch, especially a smaller independent show, and you don't know a lot of the characters, but yet everybody's going to come down. Everybody's got music. Now here comes a kid that you don't really know to some song that you don't really know, and it takes him 5 minutes to get to the ring, and you get to watch. That's a lot of dead time for me, So we have our theme music. We have everybody in the ring. The matches start in the ring. We have we have an intro. We isolate on each character, put graphics up there to pop, to highlight their name and their character. And throughout the course of the show, they react. The guys that are surrounding the ring react in character to the matches as they're happening. and it's a 3-camera shoot. I got 2 hard cameras, and I got my down camera guy circles around, shooting over people's shoulders and getting up in the ring. And then that way people can get their characters over by interacting with the match instead of having a ramp to walk down to music, so it's just a different way to do it. I didn't want my show to look like every single other wrestling show where everybody's comes down the ramp to music and goes back to music. Because to me, unless you can match Vince, then that makes you second or third place. And you're not ever going to match Vince. AEW may, but you're not going to match his intros and his production and his lasers and all that. You're not going to do it. So I wanted to give it a different look. I wanted to have kind of a combination of old school, new school wrestling with a little bit of a Fight Club look to it. So that's what I've got. And if you check it out on deepsouthwrestling.com, you can check the show out. And I've got some kids that are really, really talented. And I'll try to get kids that are all different. I don't want my show to be cookie cutter mold. I don't want every match on there to be high spot, but I do want high spot matches because that's what sells. Everybody likes that, but they want wrestling. They want storytellers. They want girls. They want sexuality. There's a lot of factors to be entered in, and I don't want everybody looking the same, working the same. I want guys that look like athletes, but not everybody has to be that. There's room for bigger people if they've got some special talent. That's cool. There's room for smaller people if they've got a special talent. That's cool. I want them to be able to highlight their talents and present their character and have another way to be looked at other than sitting at home waiting for them to give them a call to go down to one of the big companies or the other.
I like your idea. I love it.
That's because he has a spot for you. He said little people.
No, I really do like your idea. Do you have plans to if it gets bigger, to eventually have it on TV, not just the internet, or?
Yeah, I format it so that they could. It's set up the way it's formatted. You can slide commercials in right now. Mm-hmm. I would just have to time. I would have to cut my promos down a little bit to make sure that it was an hour show because I'm only doing an hour show. I think if I tried to put a 2-hour show, who's going to sit on the internet? There's kids going to sit on the internet, but they're not going to sit and look at one thing for 2 hours. Right. So I try to give it a good 1-hour show with 5 matches. It gives the kids time. They can get 10, 12 matches. That they're not, a lot of kids now, especially the kids that are talented, that are getting looked at. All they're practicing doing is these little 5-minute tryout matches so that they can get looked at because that's what they're getting ready to do. And it's really hard to tell a story and entertain people with a 5-minute boom match, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so I'm trying to give them a little more time so they can tell a story, and I give them a little bit of interview time so that they can get their character over and introduce. I'm trying to cut down the talking and cut down the walking back and forth, and you're not ever going to see a segment on Deep South where 2 guys that are supposed to be mad at each other are standing in the ring face to face, jawing at each other, both of them with a microphone in their hand. And nobody hits anybody for 10 minutes until the music starts and somebody comes running in down the ramp. You're not going to see any of that. To me, it's about highlighting their ability to talk and their ability to work. It's what they do in the ring. It's what they do with a microphone in their hand. That, to me, is what's going to put butts in seats. And that's what I try to highlight on my show.
Right. Does your dad come down when you're training people and maybe stretch people out like Stu Hart used to?
Pop used to come down for a while. Pop's 83 now. He's slowing down. Pop's slowing down a lot. But what he used to do, it was funny because he'd drive his truck right up we'd roll open the big metal door and he'd pull his truck right up there and park front center and sit there and light up his cigar and sit there with that AC. Because, man, in the summertime in our metal building, it's hot. Yeah. And in the wintertime, it's cold. And Pop would be sitting there in that truck, and it'd be middle of the summer. He'd have his AC rolling and his windows cracked, smoking a big cigar, writing down notes, watching everything we do. Then after whoever was done in the ring, we'd go over to the truck, he'd roll the windows down, out come billowing out the cigar smoke. And he would give us his critique of what we did. And it was good for the guys because they was getting an old school point of view from Pop, mm-hmm. because storytelling and old school is always going to be the same, but new school has to take the storytelling and soup the stories up a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yep.
With more action, more move, more higher impact stuff. You know, the day of laying there in a rear chin lock and hanging on to it, and all right, kid, let's just sit here until they come get with it. You know, that those days are gone, man. They're not going to get with that. You have to wrestle. You know, but anyway, that's what I'm shooting for at Deep South, man. I'm trying to give them more action in less time, less walking and less talking, and I'm trying to introduce some of the young kids that are really good. They're putting in the time and the work, man. These kids aren't just they got jobs. They either work a regular job or they're going to school. They're finding time to hit the gym. They're finding time to come and work out and practice in the ring. They're finding time to get shots in on the weekend. I mean, there's kids out here that are really putting in the work and the dedication, doing everything they can to try and get looked at. And some of them are very good. There are some kids that are really good that you'd look at and you think, damn, you know, why isn't he going at the next level? And some of them's because they got really, really good jobs, and it would be stupid to give up that really, really good job for if, you know. Mm-hmm. So they decide to just be good at this level, and I have to respect that because that's smart too, you know. Because you can be really good at that next level, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get that slot. There's a lot of people that are good, and but anyway, that's what we're looking at. That's where we're trying to just get folks looked at, and and a lot of them already have been looked at, and they're waiting to get looked at again. Some of them, and I got some young kids that I got one kid that's 19. I got two kids that are 19-year-old, but one of them is really, really good. And you'll be seeing him. He's gone down to Orlando, and they talk to him, and they want to use him, and but they want him to wait till he's 20 or 21, because 19-year-olds can be really talented in the ring, but they're still a 19-year-old, and 19-year-old is a kid,
right?
And a wrestling business is not for a kid; it is for an adult, and you have to be ready because it's got its lumps and its bruises, you know, and you have to, and you have to be alert and aware and learning and respectful and taking care of your body and your mind and your business. And, you know, it's not for a 19-year-old kid, you know,
making sure you have psychology down too.
Yeah. I'd say, yeah. You know, that's in itself takes years to learn, but it takes working with people that have psychology too, you know. That's why it's important to break through the next level, because that's where all the really, really, that's when you really start learning. When you get to where you're working with people that have psychology and you're working with them every night. That's like like a rock and roll band. All the good ones play gigs every night. You know, especially when they're starting and learning. You know, it's no different. Entertainment is entertainment. You know, we're just slamming our bodies around instead of playing guitars.
Real quick, we touched on the psychology really quick. Who would you say, just because we're big fans and we just want to know, but who would you say the best 3 or 4 wrestlers out there that have the best psychology? I mean, I'd say Jake the Snake, right? I mean,
yeah, you talking about? Well, I'm talking Triple H.
Triple H, yeah.
Yeah, Triple H would be one. Undertaker, he is and JBL too. They are both just oceans of knowledge, man, and experience, and willing and to help and pass that knowledge and psychology along, and can work with anybody. Yeah, you know, you've seen them work with big guys, little guys, you know, because they have psychology. Shawn Michaels, you know, I hate to keep throwing those names out because those are your obvious ones, but damn, when have you ever seen him have a bad match? Yeah. Except for, you know, back in the day, maybe when he was having his issues, you know, you may have seen something where he might have been a half step off, but I don't think there's ever been a match anybody said, God, that sucked. You know,
even when he was having his issues, he still had good matches.
Yeah. Ric Flair, how many people can just go from territory to territory back in the territory day and work with the top guy in each place and go an hour every night with them, you know? And tear the place down with somebody different every night, you know, different characters, different sizes, different gimmicks, and know how to tell a story with each person and get their gimmick over. That's an incredible thing. Harley Race was awesome at that too. It was, every person that was a world champion back in the day had that ability. They had to have that ability because that's what they did. They went to different territories. They went over in the end, but they made the guy that they worked with. People were like, damn, he'll get him next time, or like in Tommy Rich's case, they had him Harley come in for a week. Tommy won the title and had it for a week, and then before Harley left, he won it back. But it made Tommy, and Tommy was already big, but that was one of the things that helped make Tommy back in the day. That and the angle he did with Abdullah. But psychology, man, it's about storytelling and being able to not just get your character over, but to get the people over that you work with.
All right. So before we head off into the sunset, do you have any good, like, we're suckers for good rib stories. You got any good rib stories from back in the day?
Oh, a lot of them were mean ribs, but we used to rib poor Dave Pinzer, the ring announcer, back in the day, back when we was with WCW. It started off Kurt Hennig doing it, and then Hennig came to me and kind of drafted me, and it ended up being a team thing because Pinzer kept watching him. But everywhere we'd go, we would find where he'd leave his briefcase, and bring a chain and padlocks, and we'd chain and padlock his briefcase to whatever we could find. We chained it to toilet stools, to benches, to chairs, to anything that we could find. We would chain that damn thing. So he got to where he was looking out for Hennig and had somebody watching for him, but they wasn't looking out for me. So he did. In fact, it was just last year he asked me about that. He says, "Who was ribbing me?" And I had to smarten him up. I said, "Well, it was kind of a team collaboration, because everybody thought it was so funny there. And then now we had lookouts too, and we had lookouts looking for his lookouts, and we still was getting that dang briefcase and locking it up." And a good one time, and this was just a mistake. Everybody laughed. We were at this show in Louisiana, and it was a WCW show, and they played everybody's ring music was on a reel throughout intermission, right? So it's intermission time, and we're all talking in the locker room, and all of a sudden Big Jim Duggan's music started playing, and he didn't realize that it was just on the loop, right? And he thought, "Oh shit, it's my ring music." And we knew that it was on the loop, but we let him go. And he took off running, and he grabbed his damn board, and he went busting out the door going, "Oh!" Everybody was at intermission.
That's funny.
That's good.
All right. So we thank you very, very much for having you on, and we hope to have you on again.
Well, I'd love to, guys. Thanks for having me, man. It was a lot of fun.
This was great, and I hope your family's doing well. And
yeah, we are. And I'm sorry I got lost a couple of times there, man. I've been going all day. Actually, 2 days in a row. Today was a smooth day. Yesterday was the day, man. We had an alert with my mom early in the morning, and I had to rush her to the doctor, and it was whether we're going to put her in the hospital or not. And actually, she ended up coming home. They just had to run a bunch of tests, and I made sure that I got food for them and stuff so they wouldn't have to do anything. So I was today, and I got to have my phone waiting just to make sure anything would happen. And I hit the gym hard with my boy today. My Big Nick kicked my butt in there today. We're up on that 30 cardio on that elliptical machine now, and he's rolling with that thing. So I have to do my best to try and hang with him. But,
well, family comes first, and family is very important to us. And we totally understand.
Absolutely.
Oh, I appreciate that, guys. Thank y'all, man. All right, man. Y'all have a good one. Thank you, guys.
You too.
Have a good night.
Yep. Take care.
Bye. That was a great interview, Metalhead.
It sure was, John. And once again, I'd like to thank Nick Patrick for giving us his time. We really enjoyed it. Let's hit him up with what we're going to do next time, John.
Well, we can't always have an interview and a guest on our show.
Not always.
And last time we did the non-interview episode, we got a lot of positive feedback, And we didn't get to finish the championship episode. We didn't get to talk about the World Championship because there was a thunderstorm and it cut off some of the audio. So we are going to finish that part just talking about the World Championship, but the subject for the show is going to be
how social media has ruined professional wrestling.
And if anyone wants to chime in, please join us on Twitter and DAH_smash. And if you have any questions that we can answer, just, you know where to send it.
We'd love to read out some of your tweets on the podcast, so why don't you tweet us out how you feel social media has ruined professional wrestling. We'll give you a shout out and read what you said, and we'll have a good time with it, I think. I think this is a good subject. But if you got more show ideas, of course, hit me or John up, and we will take them under advisement. But until next time, I'm Metal Ed.
I'm Johnny O.
And this is Double Axe Handle Smash!